Before watching this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below and clicking the bell icon to be notified when published new video. Almost every event that has occurred over the course of history has some explanation behind it. Whether it's the origin of a war, some kind of a social movement, or even the death of a loved one, there are traceable reasons for these events that we use to understand them, reflect, and find closure. However, there are some historical events that never had a plausible explanation. As unsettling as it is, some strange happenings go unsolved and they still remain that way to this day. Here are 20 fascinating and bizarre occurrences that, even to this day, remain unexplained. 1. The disappearing pilot. In March of 2017, a 27-year-old Chinese student named Xinrong hired the pilot of a single-engine plane to take him from Ann Arbor Municipal Airport in Michigan to Harbor Springs. His plane, however, crashed on its way over Manitouwadge, Ontario. Weirdly, the body of Xinrong was never found in the wreckage. 2. The Arctic Ping. In 2016, the Canadian military was tasked with trying to find the source of a mysterious sound emanating from the seabed of the Fury and Hecla Strait in the Canadian Arctic. Local hunters reported the strange sound as a kind of constant beeping, but no explanation was ever determined. 3. The Ghost Ship. A man named Jason Aslin snapped this picture as he was filming a music video on Lake Superior. This strange shimmering silhouette remained in sight for almost 30 minutes, and it resembled a large ship. Jason never found out what it was. 4. Teleportation in Russia. This dashcam picture was taken in 2012. If you look closely, you can see a figure in a white overcoat standing directly behind a large truck. Apparently, the person had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, leading people to believe they teleported from another location. 5. Chilean UFO. In 2014, a technician on board a Chilean Navy helicopter filmed a strange unidentified flying object in the sky. A committee tasked with investigating the occurrence ruled out a commercial airplane, a weather balloon, and falling space debris. They eventually concluded that it couldn't be explained. 6. French poltergeist. In January 2017, the CIA published a previously classified document describing a French family who was plagued by a poltergeist. Apparently, the ghost moved pieces of furniture on its own and frequently made startling noises. The CIA was going to investigate the situation further, but the family fled to Guadeloupe. 7. The Man in the Iron Mask. This mystery man lived from around 1640 to 1703, and he spent the last 3 decades of his life imprisoned in various French jails, including Paris's famous Bastille, wearing an iron mask. Many people theorized who he was, but his true identity still remains unknown. 8. The Salish Sea Feet. Since 2007, 13 dismembered feet have washed up on the Salish Sea shores of British Columbia, Canada, and each one was wearing some type of athletic shoe. No one knows who they belonged to or where they came from. 9. France's deadly dancers. In 1518, a woman named Frau Troffea began dancing in the middle of the street in Strasbourg, France. Others began to join her and they didn't break. Within a month, nearly 400 residents were taking part in the strange dance party. Soon, however, people began dying of exhaustion, heart attacks, and strokes. No one is quite sure why the bizarre dance party kicked off in the first place. 10. Dyatlov Pass. In the winter of 1959, 9 experienced hikers from Russia trekked into a remote area of the Ural Mountains. For some unknown reason, the hikers all abandoned their camp in the middle of the night and were found dead shortly after from hypothermia and other physical injuries. One of the bodies was even missing its eyes and tongue. 11. Florida's human combustion. In 1951, a landlord named Pansy Carpenter called the police after she discovered the doorknob of one of her tenants, Mary Reeser, was burning hot. When police entered the St. Petersburg apartment, they found a pile of ashes, Mary's left foot, her spine, and her skull. The FBI claimed she set herself ablaze with a lit cigarette, but nothing else in the apartment had been damaged. 12. Frozen alive. In December of 1980, a 19-year-old girl named Jean Hillier crashed her car while on the way to a friend's house in rural Minnesota. She tried walking the remaining 2 miles, but the frigid temperatures stopped her. She was found frozen solid the next morning, and her heart rate had dropped to 12 beats per minute. Miraculously, she made a full recovery, and doctors were baffled as to how she survived the ordeal. 13. The Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste was an American merchant ship that set sail from New York City to Genoa, Italy, in November of 1872. A month after the departure, the ship was found floating aimlessly in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. All the supplies were still in order, but the entire crew mysteriously vanished. 14. The Mystery Woman from Norway. In 1970, a group of hikers were trekking through the Isdalen Valley Mountains in Norway when they came upon the body of a partially burned woman. An autopsy revealed she had consumed over 50 sleeping pills. Her fingerprints were sanded off, and she had also suffered a blow to her neck. Police were never able to determine her true identity. 15. Dog suicide. The Overtown Bridge in Dumbarton, Scotland, was built in 1895, and over the past 5 decades, about 50 dogs have leapt over the site to their death. A canine psychologist, a veterinarian behavioral specialist, and even a psychic were called upon to shed some light in this gruesome trend, but none of them had any answers. 16. The Tunguska event. In 1908, a massive explosion said to be over 150 times more powerful than a nuclear bomb leveled over 800 square miles of a remote part of the Siberian forest. Some claim the explosion was caused by a meteor, but no crater was ever found. 17. The body that never decomposed. An intensely religious Catholic nun named Catherine Label lived in France from 1806 until death in 1876. 57 years after her death, her remains were exhumed, and experts found that her body had sustained very little decomposition. The Catholic Church claims this happens to people who are looked upon highly in the eyes of God, but there is no scientific proof to back up that statement. 18. The Porpoise Grave. While a team of archaeologists were working on a site on a tiny island in the English Channel, they came upon what they believed to be a 14th century grave. Upon excavation, they were stunned to find the remains of a porpoise instead of a human. No one knows why the body of an aquatic creature was placed in the grave. 19. New England vampires. In 1990, the state archaeologist of Connecticut, Nick Bellantoni, investigated a farmer's graveyard. One of graves contained remains that were arranged in a skull and crossbones pattern. After some research, the archaeologist discovered many of the bodies in the cemetery were burned to prevent their alleged vampirism from spreading, but he couldn't figure out why the people who lived in New England at the time were fearful of vampires. 20. The Toxic Woman. In 1994, a woman named Gloria Ramirez was admitted to the emergency room at California's Riverside General Hospital for the final stages of her cervical cancer. Nurses began to notice strange ammonia-like odors coming from her body, and 23 members of the hospital staff fell ill shortly after Gloria arrived. Gloria passed away that evening, but the cause of the stench was never discovered. Some of these stories sure are creepy. You'd like to think there are always reasons for strange events happening, but sometimes, the answer simply remains a mystery. Share these bizarre unsolved mysteries with your friends below.